Welcome, Dr. James Beckett, Sports Card Insights. Thanks, sponsors, Beckett Media, Beckett Grading, Beckett Authentication, ComC.com, Burbank Sports Cards, Mike Stadium Sports Cards, Heritage Auctions, Huggins Scott Auctions, Topps, Upper Deck, and Panini. First question from Mark says, what about BA card issues from not in the US, non-USA? Like sportscasters, I think, had a lot of international aspect to them. And then he specifically mentions the 1988 Fournier set, which he says got the NBA logo on the back of the box. It says official licensed product NBA. That's a good example of something that perhaps was only licensed internationally and probably was not a card license. It was for the product, that item that was in the box. Now, in the box were 33 cards or 25 cards or whatever, but it was an interesting set. But they've never really caught on, partly because they're international. And that ties into what Ryan, following up with me a while back on my questioning the Star Company license. I wasn't questioning whether they had a license. I was questioning the nature of the license. And I agree, it is a card license. And I'm not saying it was international or the things that would plague the Fournier set, but it was a unique license. And if you looked at all the licensing over the last many years, I think it's an outlier in the way it was handled. And that's based on what I've seen. The outlier at the time and compared to before it and after it. And I think it's an outlier now too. Frankly, because of the Michael Jordan situation, it gets special consideration. I'm just trying to share the context. And context is a good thing, except that there's the contemporaneous context of what at the time, and there's now the new context based on all that's happened. And that's what's happening in our politics and in our culture. People are looking at new context, the current context. Okay, then from Jay Giuliano, he says, your statements about the Star Company not having to provide a guaranteed minimum sell-through proves a point that no manufacturer would guarantee sell-through, and the NBA understood that, so they didn't require a production run to meet the non-existent demand. It wasn't non-existent demand. It was demand that was not huge. I take your point. I was there, that basketball cards were not popular, but they were not non-existent. Topps did produce a lot of basketball cards. The problem is they produced too many. I'm sure they overproduced because of the minimum guarantees. If they were allowed to print much, much smaller, just to the demand, they would have sold through. That would have been a nice thing. But I don't believe Topps was afforded that opportunity. They had a standard license that had guarantees beyond the demand. Now, the second point that I take on that is that you can't say if there's no demand, tough luck, because the famous example of the Walkman or an iPod, people didn't know they needed it till they saw it, and it was interestingly promoted and marketed. So marketing is a skill, and if there's no demand and you just say there's nothing we can do, that's not true. The marketing dollars that Star put out were much less than Topps or Fleer later. If there's no demand and you don't put any marketing dollars to it, yeah, I think you're going to have trouble selling. So if you look at the pop reports for the Magic and Bird, Dr. J, the double rookie with Dr. J, there's plenty of them out there. And there was demand then, just the production was far in excess of what the demand was. Most card shops carried basketball cards. They'd carry a box or two. They didn't carry a lot. Again, from Jay Giuliano, says this John Stockton dilemma, that John Stockton doesn't get a Fleer card till 4 years later. John Stockton didn't start until his fourth year. He really came on with the emergence of Karl Malone, and then the Malone-Stockton combination is what put Stockton. So yeah, Stockton had a great game as a rookie, but if you look at his stats, he didn't really start or play very much until his fourth year. Last one from Jay Giuliano. He says the concept of RC has become silly. It used to mean what the best card for the subject. Now, I'm not agreeing with that. I think that even in the 70s, when you had way less complexity about rookie cards, when you only had Topps and you had Bowman before that, but there wasn't a lot of confusion. But I'll tell you right now, in the 70s, when I was very active, an advanced collector would trade a 52 Topps mantle or a 51 Bowman mantle for a Stahlmeyer mantle, recognizing that the rarity and scarcity was so much more. So RC does not mean best card. The definition of RC is the first card from a major manufacturer, et cetera, et cetera. And that year is the guy's rookie card year. It's not necessarily his or her rookie year, but it's the rookie card year. And then anything after that is not an RC or a rookie card. It's after that. So yeah, the attributes matter. And frankly, Jay, your final statement is that it's up to each individual to figure out what the best card is for what that collector wants to collect. And again, in the 70s, it was simple. In the 80s, it got a little more complicated. In the 90s, it got way more complicated. Once you had the rise of these case hit inserts, for Michael Jordan, to me, the green PMG is the very best card you could get. I think it'd be the toughest to find, and it transcends an RC. In the simpler days, yeah, XRC, RC, all those other kind of things mattered a lot more. They still matter. They don't matter perhaps as much because the hobby's more complicated. And then again, from Mark commenting about my episode where I was comparing and contrasting XRCs with RCs. Actually, I came out with that. That was back in the day when it was mainly me. And I talked to a lot of people, and I didn't say, hey, what do you think about an XRC? Because there wasn't anything to say what it was. I just said XRC, an extended rookie card. I put those initials in there and said, this is my sense of what the hobby wants. They do not want a Darryl Strawberry 83 Topps traded extended set to be his rookie, which would then make all the 84 cards that were doing great not rookie cards, because you can only have one rookie card year. Once your rookie card comes out, the next year, everything is your just second year cards. And so he said that other companies, SCD and others, could do their own thing. They certainly could. Tough Stuff, SCD, all those had price guides and types of things. They could have done that. They didn't, because there was general agreement that an XRC was an accommodation to situations where a card out there predated the RC and was worth consideration. And like I said, we listed it, we let the price float. Then his final statement is that it's good news that the Star 101 and the Fleer 8687 Fleer card number 57 are both important. I'll promise you this, Mark, the 8687 Fleer card number 57, that iconic card would not be nearly as iconic if it would not have been considered the RC. In other words, the first widely, normally distributed card. Next, from Vintage Sanctuary, has enjoyed this dialogue, but he said, your 10 reasons why the Star 101 Jordan is an XRC rather than RC involve several that imply the Star Company was in some way inferior to the standards of that. Yes, I am saying that. And then he says, I'm saying the XRC is not a pejorative. The other people are saying that XRC is a pejorative, that it'd be better or more appropriate that it was an RC and it would sell better or for higher. I actually agree. If a card is an RC instead of an XRC, and again, it's not based on popularity, it's based on the nature of how it was issued. But if it was an RC, then that is a more focused demand. The price probably would go up. I'm not disagreeing with that. So I'm not saying that an XRC is a bad card. They're saying the XRC is less desirable than an RC. And I'm agreeing, subject to the fact that you have different circumstances. But the circumstances of the Star Company, they were not a major card company. They didn't have pack pulled and all the distributions. It's still a great card. Anyway, Vintage Sanctuary, I don't really see it as a contradiction. I'm saying that if the Star 101 Jordan is an XRC, and that's not a bad thing. Other people think it's a bad thing. Next, from Tiger Jordan 8986, says, I'm criticizing the Star Company photography. No, I'm not. I was criticizing the Star Company photography for card 101 because I think it's a bad choice of a photo. But he says the 86 Fleer basketball set reuses 19 player photos that were already used in the Star sets over the course there. I'm aware of that. It's not the photos that are the problem. The problem with the Star Company is they had almost zero marketing budget, I think. Again, photos were tricky in those days. They were very limited, restricted access for official photographers. It was way smaller in those days. You needed special lighting. And so there were a limited number of photos, limited number of photographers. The problem, what I'm criticizing Star Company, is that over the 3+ years that they produced cards, their design really never changed. They all look pretty much the same. They have a different number in the corner of Star 85 or 86 or 84 or something like that. Even the special sets, you can see that they're the special set because they'll carry a little logo in the corner that's different, but there was no design ingenuity, no design creativity. They just all look the same. And they didn't look premium. Tiger Jordan, again, it says he's talking about if it's an XRC because they were released later in the NBA season. I see what you're saying, but Darryl Strawberry was issued late in 83, and it was after the 83 sets had come out. And that was not fair to Donruss and Fleer, frankly. And so the attempt that all the companies were going to have a rookie card that next year. Once you have a rookie card, the next year's cards are second-year cards. So Darryl Strawberry would be the example of that. But he's noting that now in the current year's sets, there's lots of cards that are released after the end of the season. And that is something that they're getting away with. The licensors, the leagues and players associations are letting them do it, but they wouldn't be XRCs. They're extending the year of when rookie cards. If you're putting out 2024 football cards after the end of the 24 season, that really ought to be an extended set, but they're not calling it an extended set. They're making it look like it's a normal issue set. And the distinction is impossible for publishers or hobby influencers to split that hair. So I don't like it, but as I've said, I'm not in charge. It's not cheating because it's not illegal, but they're really pushing the envelope. They're going to get as many Wemby cards they can. He's well into his second season now, and I think we're still seeing cards that are styled and released and titled in such a way that they are cards from his rookie season. I agree, Tiger Jordan. I don't like that. But again, that's just like we had 30 years ago. The card companies tried to beat the rules. Okay, all systems go. 321 wrote in talking about he started collecting Jordan cards in 1989 when he was almost 12. And he said he went to dozens of card shows, one or two a month. And when the price guide came out, he said there wasn't interest in star cards. He said maybe 5 or 10 dealers I saw at that time had a few Jordan star cards, but they were not considered serious cards by the collectors and even the dealers themselves. He said they were just the star cards. Dealers didn't push them. Okay. The problem is, and I don't think I've belabored this enough, is that they weren't pushing the star cards. They were pushing the star packs, the sealed bags. Okay. That's very different than anything else. Those were like small sets. You could see the player on the top and the player on the bottom. You didn't know what the condition were. So it wasn't like a wax pack. It was a sealed bag. And if there had been the cards, and you didn't have grading at that point, really, and so you weren't seeing it. So you only saw the top card. If they would have marketed it individually, and I don't believe Star was restricted, but again, if I saw the license, maybe their license was particular to putting out bags instead of putting out individual cards. If they'd have put individual cards, you could have had a run on people wanting the Jordans and some of these other great guys that had their first cards in that. But they didn't. And maybe they weren't allowed to, just like the Fournier set. They couldn't issue them in a random pack. They were licensed to be distributed as that little tiny box that you occasionally see them in. Again, if they'd have done that, I think the price would have gone up. You know, we were listing these things in the price guide. They went up as much as they went up, and they would have gone up more if there had been more activity. We weren't holding them back. You didn't see them. And so that's what they're saying. And then finally from Game Time Gallery, 7661. Said most of the people in this debate were not even around collecting in 1984. That's true, but I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem even if they weren't alive in 1984. People are entitled to their opinions, and we should try to learn from history. Respectful debate is not only good, it's great. It's what makes America great. Okay, you ought to have the First Amendment. You ought to be able to share your opinion, but it's just an opinion. Now, my opinion is what I think, but then I'm also trying to give you perspective and context of what was going on back in the day, some of which you really can't read. I don't think it's out there, but people are voting Game Time Gallery with their dollars. So the desirability of a card, whether something is an RC or a rookie or a TRC or whatever you want to say for any kind of subject. And nowadays, you have, as you point out, there's thousands of rookie cards of a player as it comes out. So it's gotten pretty crazy, but people vote the desirability with their dollars. What do they chase? What do they go after? What do they bid up? And if you didn't have any kind of categorization of RC, XRC, or nothing, if everything was nothing, as I said, it would be an opportunity for unscrupulous dealers to knowingly call something a rookie, which is the second or third year, and without further explanation. So there ought to be some taxonomy that makes sense. But it's less of a factor more and more. Victor Roman spends a lot of time on this. There's a lot of people who don't care. They don't care if it's an RC. It's an early card. It's a best card, regardless of the manufacturer. They want the card. And if enough people chase, if supply is low and demand is high, then the price keeps going up. I just want to thank everybody. This is energizing for me. It's taken me back to 40 years ago? Wow, 40 years ago. And I've enjoyed every decade. I've enjoyed every year. I've enjoyed every month at a monthly magazine. Thanks, everybody. Keep your questions coming. drjamesbeckett@gmail.com or through the YouTube responses. And keep caring. I care, and I'm glad I'm getting responses from people that care at least as much as I do, apparently. But thanks, and see you in a couple days.
The man in the house of cards. The man in the house of cards. The man in the house of cards is doing